Welcome back. I am so excited because I just got done with this book, and I know I say I'm so excited a lot. I truly am. I truly am excited. How about that? Because the book that you are looking at the cover of, Lisa Wingate's newest book, The Book of Lost Friends, came out April 7th. It's been on the New York Times bestseller since the day it came out. This week it is number 12, and there is good reason, because remember last week I read Before We Were Yours because I knew I was going to read this book, and I'm like, yeah, I got to get that book in. I am really weird about not reading all their books. When I love an author, I want to read all their books, and I am so weird about it. So I was like, I got to read that one. I never had a chance. I did it. I did the review last week, knowing this week I was going to be doing this review. It did not disappoint. It was so amazing. And I don't want to say better. I thought Before We Were Yours was absolutely perfect, and this one again is absolutely perfect. Loved her topic. We are talking another historical fiction up on your screen. First of all, 400 pages, flew by. As a matter of fact, when I had to see on Amazon that it was 400 pages, and I was like, oh my God, it was 400 pages. Flew by, because it's really hard for 400 pages to just fly by and not even realize it. Historical fiction, Civil War, which in my opinion, we do not get enough historical fiction Civil War books. We just don't. There's so many World War I, World War II, more World War II than ever. But this isn't even during the Civil War. This is post, which is so important. I remember learning about the Civil War in school, and it was like, Civil War ended, and then we're on to World War I. And you're like, the country almost gets torn apart, and then the North wins, which I'm in Pennsylvania, so we're a part of that. We're like, yay, we won. And then we move on to World War I. But what happened? What happened between the Civil War and World War I was so many things for our country. How did we come back together? How did we forgive and move on? How did families move on? That's what this book is about. It's about the reconstruction. I'm going to put pictures up as I'm talking. The first reason, I always give 5 reasons as to why I love this book. And the very first reason is because it's historical fiction, because I love historical fiction. That is always going to be my number one. That is me. I love them. I can't get away from them. Until I get bored, and these people keep finding more and more topics. I don't think I'm ever going to get bored. And this is like perfect. This was such perfect story. That was easy enough. Number 2, okay, HANNIE. She was my number 1 pick, HANNIE GOSSETT. There are 2 storylines, and I love them equally, but I was like, who am I going to put as number 2? Am I going to make it HANNIE? And then I did, because I loved her so much. What Lisa does amazingly is characters. She makes these women, you want to be their friends. You admire them. They're not perfect. They're flawed, but they're flawed in such a way that you're like, because sometimes the perfect characters, you're like, oh yeah, I can't be friends. Can you be friends with a perfect person? No, you can't. That's just, you're just like, oh, I can't do it, because you can't live up to that. Her women are so relatable. Her women are so loving and strong. And HANNIE, she was so strong, and she's like somebody you just want to be, because you want to like follow her around and just learn from her. Okay, so let me just, before I go on and on and on, let me tell you her story. She was from Louisiana, 1875, ex-slave, and I don't even want to get into that story because I want you to read the book, but that is her story. Amazon is like, it's a story of 3 women's travel during Reconstruction from Louisiana to Texas, but I felt like it was more like her story. I don't know. There are 3 women. That is not a lie, but I just felt like it was her story. So, sometimes you cringe. I know I do. When I'm going to read a story about a time period that is so specific to a part of the country that has dialect, and Louisiana is huge, you cringe for the author. You're like, please, if I can't read this, if I can't picture them speaking it, and if it's forced, and if the words are forced, but they were not. She did such a good job getting that dialect to the point that you felt really comfortable in her talking. That is not easy. She makes it look easy. Trust me that I have read too many books that I'm like, ugh, I can't read it. I can't read it. I'm hearing wrong words come out of the wrong person's mouth and I can't do it. You know, at first I was like, okay, so this is the one. This is the character that could be messed up with. And of course I knew that with the Before We Were Yours, like she knows how to write for the younger crowd. Like the younger characters, I should say, not younger crowd, younger characters. She gets them in a way that is truly a gift. That's all I can say. It's her little gift. I just didn't want to give Hannie up, which leads me to number 3, Benny. I'm like, you know, usually I walk away with characters in a book. There's one that I don't want to. This one had both of them. Again, I don't know. This is why she's so good, and I can't stress that enough. I really can't. Benny's story takes place in 1987, Louisiana. Her story, she's a teacher. And her story is to come to this, you know, this community, not being a part of the community, teach kids that aren't necessarily the easiest to teach. And she finds a project for them, which is the title of the Book of Lost Friends. She finds this project where they're going to explore history through the writings of a different time, which is like, isn't that how we learn about history? That's why I read historical fiction, because if I were to read a textbook about a president, Abraham Lincoln, but then I read a book that talked about him in a way that was like his story and made him a real character, and that's what she did for these kids. This is why I used historical fiction to teach my children, because it is the best way to learn. And I learned so much from this book about that time period, and from Penny, who I loved. And I don't want to say too much about her story. I'm like, what should I say about her story? I don't want to say much at all. How about that? I just don't want to. I loved it so much that I don't want to give too much away. And to tell you the truth, I never read a lot of my Amazon, like a lot of the reviews on Amazon. And I did just because I wanted to see what people said about Benny. And I'm like, no, you guys say too much. Stop. Just tell us to read it. You say too much. You give too much away. And I don't like it. Which brings me to number 4, The Timelines, which is the exact same thing I said about Before We Were Yours. She unites these 2 timelines into one story, not forced. Another thing that I dread about timelines is when an author takes them on and then it's a disconnect, or it's forced, or you're like, why these 2? I don't understand. You have to explain it to me. She did not have to explain it. Again, about 80% through the book, last line of a chapter, and tears. And I was like, oh my gosh, Lisa, you did it again. You did it again. You turned the whole story. It was like, we're going down this road of this amazing story, and you turned it into like more amazing. You know how with thrillers, there's like these reveals. It's a reveal, but it's like it through historical fiction. I'm like getting goosebumps even when I'm doing books like this. Like I feel like I just go on and on about how amazing it is. And I'm like, you're being so repetitive, but I can't help it. I just finished the book and this is my true feelings. I get so enthusiastic, like overboard. My children would tell you, it's my personality. When I love something, I love it 100%, 110%. That's just me. And then, you know, I read a book like this and I'm like, everybody listen to me. Read the book. And that's how I get. I can't help it. Which brings me to number 5, because it's Lisa. Again, her picture's up on the screen. Her books are perfect. And you know what? I was thinking as I was reading it, because there were some parts during her description, a lot of times you find yourself skipping. I do. And I know you do. So let's just be honest. We skip over. We see a big paragraph of description and we're like, nah, don't need that. Go to dialogue. With her books, the descriptions are so beautiful that they're not overdone and they're not underdone. Because some books you're like, I didn't get into it. Her books got you there. The descriptions put you there, so you felt like you were there, and then they were so beautiful. Her words are amazing. And I was going to write this down, this one quote, and then I didn't write it down, which I wish I would have. But like, it wasn't like one of those quotes that's like a life quote. It was like just beautiful. She was talking about something so ordinary, and she made it, when I read it 5 times. And that's what you will find you will do with her books, is like, you're like, wow, look at that beautifully written sentence. And you know what, Lisa? I'm thinking that when you were in English, I'm picturing you in class, you know, high school, college, whatever class setting, and professors and teachers are reading your writing and they're like, and you blew them away. That's what I'm thinking. You know, they're like, you know, how they usually write down like, please add more description about this. They're like, wow, that is just perfect. You are it. They're just putting perfect on it. That's what I envision. That's my vision, Lisa. I'm not gonna. I know, like, I've said this a million times, but you've got to read this book. There's a reason it's on the New York Times bestseller. There's a reason it goes up there on the first week, because everybody knows it's going to be that good. Perfect time period. I listened to it, I read it, and what I loved at the end, if you're listening to the audio, which I know she does in her book too, but if you're listening to the audio, you get to listen to her describe at the end her story and how she found this story, and it's beautiful, and I'm not going to ruin it. All I'm going to tell you is that I love to listen to the author's voices, so that's one reason why I will get the Audible. Listening to her at the end, I was like, oh, I love that she put that at the end. Not everybody does. Indie Bound, for when we go to bookstores again, which I think it's going to be soon. I'm in Pennsylvania. I don't know. I have high hopes of seeing a bookstore really, really soon. It is April 30th. I will probably get this video out within the next couple days. Pray that we see a bookstore. To read this book today, below is the Amazon. You know, get the Kindle, get the audio, you can have it. It'll, you know, what else are you doing, right? This book is that good, people. That's all I can tell you. So thank you, Lisa. I can't wait to see what story you are going to give us next, and do it soon. How about that? So everyone, until my next